Hello and welcome back to another episode of the TF Soccer Training Podcast, where we are committed to helping your player grow on and off the field. I'm your host, Coach Taylor, and I'm excited to have you join us today. If you have not already, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. It really does help a lot. So last week we talked about common pitfalls that parents fall into when they're with their player. And this week we're going to get into, is your player too win-oriented? And so we're going to do that right after this break. Okay, welcome back from the break. So I've been talking to parents. I have been, watching kind of different outlets and receiving different messages and kind of reaching out because this is something that I have seen. And really what kind of got me thinking about it was this particular Facebook post, which a parent was really kind of pleading to other parents and coaches and former players about, okay, how do I help my player who is super win-oriented? And she detailed in there that her player was somebody who was uber competitive, hated to lose, but to a point where their player was losing control on the field. And they would often be kind of inconsolable after losses. And they were someone who actually she details in the post how they almost got into a fight. And it was really interesting to kind of see the two camps that kind of formed in response to her question, because she was like, listen, what can I do? And there was one camp who thought that it was a really good thing and that it was really a positive thing. And then there was obviously another camp that was kind of opposite of that, who's like, no, this is not a good thing. This is kind of actually a really bad thing. And before I get into what my response or what camp I kind of fall into, I just want to say that I'm going to kind of detail each side, because I think they both have pretty valid arguments. But I think it's something that is definitely to think about, because I see it all the time, even with my own players who I work with. And I think those who thought it was a good thing, it was because that they felt that the player was uber competitive. And that meant that was a good thing, and that they would hate to lose. And they detailed, Ronaldo, when he was younger growing up, he hated to lose. He was a player who was like, refused to lose. And obviously he grew up to be Ronaldo, who is, even at his age, still doing some pretty incredible things on the soccer field. And so that kind of for them justified the fact that he was super uber competitive when he was young, and that's who he grew up to end up being now, being a world-class athlete and soccer player. And then there were other people who thought it was a bad thing, mainly because this young youth player was showing such poor sportsmanship. And, again, like I said before, this young player would almost go out and get in a fight with the other team's player. And that the fact that he was inconsolable and uncontrollable on the field was not a good thing. And, before I share my opinion, again, I just want to share this quote. All of life is peaks and valleys. Don't let the peaks get too high or the valleys too low. And that was shared by Mr. John Wooden. And for those who don't know, he was one of the greatest coaches of all time. John Wooden led the UCLA men's basketball team to 11 NCAA Division I college championships, which is kind of unheard of, other than really right now it's the UConn women. They're on some pretty incredible stuff, doing some pretty incredible stuff too. But I bring him into the equation because his approach kind of applies to this situation. When they were on their peak and when they were winning multiple games and winning multiple titles, they never got too high. He never felt like he was kind of above it. He never got to a point where it was like all that mattered was winning. And then when they obviously lost, because you're not going to always just win, he never got too low, right? So when people come with this argument, which is saying, you know, I do not want to quench that player's fight. I want to encourage that. I want him to be competitive. I want them to be, super uber competitive players. And well, if that means that they're not the greatest, if they have kind of poor sportsmanship, then that's okay, because look at what they're going to end up doing. And I think John Wooden would say no, right? And he would say, you know, you need to be a person of character. And if you conflate competitiveness and having a will to win with being a poor sport, then you're missing the whole picture of what sports truly brings. We have sports not to be able. Sports should not be our whole thing. Winning should not be our whole thing. It should be the lessons that we learn through sports. It should be the character that sports produce through us. So that leads me into another kind of a little tidbit right on the side. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was one of John Wooden's players at UCLA. And if you don't know Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he's one of the all-time scoring leaders in the NBA. He played for the Lakers during the 1980s. And he was an incredible athlete even when he was in high school. And he spoke very highly of John Wooden. And he comments kind of like, while on the outside they had a lot of things that were going against them, you know, they were kind of compatible souls in a certain way. And he respected John Wooden because he was truly a man of character and a man who cared about his players. And he knew deep down that his coach cared about him as a person, so that's why he ended up going to UCLA. But one of the things that Coach Wooden told to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was that you must use basketball. You cannot let basketball use you. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar kept that with him. Even throughout his whole NBA career, he never wanted just to be a basketball player. He was somebody who was also involved in the civil rights movement. He was also a person who was interested in several things outside of sports. And so even when he retired from basketball, he ended up being a prolific writer, and he's kind of a commentator on all things in life. And he's active in various pursuits even now, in, you know, several years after he's retired. And I think kind of juxtapose him between various NBA players. And they will, you know, a lot of them have gone into sports, gone into coaching, general managing, being a sports commentator, which is fine. I think that's great. But Kareem was always way more than that. And I think that's something that is showing that you can be excellent, you can be great at what you do, but it's not who you are. You can have all these various parts of your person. So I bring this all up to help us to not kind of twist it. We've twisted sports into thinking that, okay, we need to work and really push our players into this. We want them to be the very best at what they do, and we want them to be uber competitive, and we kind of slack off on the other stuff. So we will allow them to kind of get away with a lot of other things instead of paying attention to those little details. And we are not here to just play our sports. We're not here just to be great soccer players. And no matter if your player becomes a great professional athlete, a great pro player, and plays a long career, and I wish everyone who's pursuing that, I hope that they're able to achieve that, and I hope that they are able to play for as long as they need to, if they so choose. I want them to be even greater people. I want them to be known beyond just their athletic pursuits. And so where do I fall on this side of the equation? Well, I fall on the fact that players need to be held accountable, right? If they are showing poor attitude or poor sports, then they need to be called out. They need to be told that, no, that's not how we respond to things. And so if you're a parent and you're saying, okay, what do I do then, Taylor? How do I kind of nip this in the bud? Well, number one, I think players are looking for role models, and they need to have a role model, number one, in their coach, and actually number one in their parent, and then number two in the coaches that are surrounding them. So what happens when you, I don't want to get too political here, what happens when, the person who you voted for, what happens when they lose the election? How do you respond, right? What happens just in life in general? And let's even take it back to sports. Let's say you're playing a board game with your child here. What happens when you lose a game, right? How do you respond? Do you kind of pout? Are you trying to throw it? Are you shaking the hands, congratulating them, modeling the behavior that you want to see with your player? And the same thing with your coaches. Hold your coaches to that standard too. You don't have to tell them like, oh, you need to do this. You obviously can't tell an adult what to do, but watch them. You want to be around coaches and players who are not yelling and screaming at the ref, who are not trying to protect their own ego. They are modeling good behavior, because players and children in general watch way more than what you think. And so I would say be that role model. If you want them, play games with them, play different board games with them, spend time with them, and show them how you want to respond to different things when you lose, right? Because they will learn from that, and they will watch you from that. And so again, my goal is to help your players to have that true development. And so I just want to conclude again with, you don't have to provoke competitiveness, to promote that desire and that will to want to win. We don't have to still slack off on our standards when it comes to trying to hold people accountable. We can still hold players accountable. We can still hold them to a standard that is high, which is saying we're going to be good sports, but we're going to compete to the highest ability. But we're still going to be great people as well. And so I would just encourage your player to do the right thing, but also watch your own behavior. Role model those things for your player. Make sure that they understand that it is really important for them to be players and people who know how to lose gracefully and know how to be better people than they are competitors. So that's it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for checking it out and watching or listening. If you are interested in learning more about some of our various programs or learning more about our mental training mentorship, I will be happy to talk to you or set up a chance to chat about your players' goals. Go ahead and click the link in the bio or in the description box and go ahead and check out how you can get in touch with me. Until next time, please take care.